Learning and building capability. We've seen how innovation involves a journey from idea through to creating and capturing value. So we've been through that journey, we've searched far and wide, we've found an opportunity, we've implemented that, we've launched it and we've made a success of it. So wonderful. What do we do next? Well, there's one more thing we should think about. The opportunity to reflect on what we've done and improve our capability for the next time. Even if we failed, even if it hasn't worked, there are still many learning opportunities for us where we can get ideas for how we might do this whole thing better next time. And there's really two aspects to this. We can sit back and we can repair and improve what we already do. If we think in terms of a ship, we've made our voyage, we'd want to step back and repair the sails, perhaps fix some of the broken planks, generally tidy the ship up, ready for its next voyage. But we might also want to add new elements, try some new things. On our next voyage, we might be going somewhere different. We might want to add some new features. So it's this constant business of reflecting, improving what's already there, repairing and tidying things up, but also stretching and extending our capability. So what we really need in order to do this is to build into our innovation process a systematic learning cycle. Now if you think about it, learning doesn't just happen. It doesn't magically happen from nowhere. It's actually a process, a cycle. Typically something happens to us and if we're smart, we take an opportunity at the end of our journey to reflect on what was going on, what worked and what didn't and why. And we might then use that to build our model, to build our concept of how innovation might work, and then develop some new ideas, some new things to try, to experiment with for the next time, and do the thing again. So there's a learning cycle involved in trying to understand and improve the way we manage innovation. Now there's different kinds of learning opportunity at the end of our journey. First of all, we can think about building our knowledge base, growing our competence. What do we know about? Organizations like 3M, which are successful innovators, have spent 100 years or more innovating. Not just going in random directions, they've spent a great deal of effort building a deep knowledge base. In their case, it's all about coating surfaces of different kinds. From their early days when they were coating sandpaper with different kinds of abrasive material, right through to the kind of work they did with magnetic tapes and other things where they're coating particles of oxide onto different surfaces. All of this, coating surfaces, is something they know a great deal about. And they can deploy this in different ways. It's their competence. And we can see this in any organization. As it does what it does, whether it's search engines with Google or whether it's smartphones with Apple, whatever it is, learning about how to do that, and in particular the deep knowledge, the technical and market knowledge you need to make a success, is an important opportunity. So we want to make sure we harvest that at the end of our innovation journey. But there's also the possibility to enhance our capability, developing routines, patterns of behavior for managing innovation, so they become the culture, the way we do things around here. And there's a third element to this reflection and learning opportunity, which is about growing and extending our capabilities, preparing for different conditions, or starting new kinds of venture. So there are at least 3 ways in which we might learn, all of which could help put us in a stronger position for next time. Now the good news is there are many tools and techniques to help us with this challenge of learning and building capability. They're all really built around the idea of a post-project review, which makes sense. After all, if we don't learn from history, we are risking having to repeat that history. We don't really want to make the same mistakes again and again. Now, the danger in a project review, of course, is that it very quickly becomes a battle where people are trying to point the finger of blame. But a good project review actually says it's not about blame accounting, it's trying to find what are the root causes, what went wrong and why, so that we can fix it. Now importantly, this kind of approach applies just as much to small incremental projects that do better kind of innovation as it does to major radical projects. And in fact, embedding this kind of learning culture can be an extremely powerful resource. One of the tools which has been widely used in many organisations is a very simple post-project review cycle. It's often called the PDCA, plan, do, check, adapt, act or adjust. And the idea is very simple. We plan to do something, we execute it, and then we review it, we check. And on the basis of that, we adjust, we adapt. And there's a very simple cycle. Now this is at the heart of the lean revolution, the quality revolution. A huge amount of what has transformed process innovation is based on this small, high-frequency, repetitive learning cycle. Now that's fine, but what about when the game changes? Now we need single-loop learning in order to improve things on a continuing basis. That's a little bit like our thermostat on our central heating or our air conditioning system. We set what we want it to do, and then the system adapts and makes sure it stays in tune with what we've set. That's a learning adaptive cycle. But sometimes we need to reset it. We need to come in and reset the thermostat because conditions have changed. We have a sudden heat wave or a sudden freeze in temperature. So at that stage, when major changes happen, we need to adapt our model in a more significant fashion. So actually we need not only the single loop learning, but occasionally a double loop, a step backwards to reset the whole thing. So in this we're really talking about what we could call dynamic capability. The ability to regularly step back from our innovation process, review it, and say, of the things we do, what should we do more of? It's working. What should we do less of? Perhaps even stop. And what new things, what different things might we need to start doing? And this capability really is an important aspect at the end of our innovation journey before we start our next project. Now, let's look at a few examples to put some flesh on all of these bones. First of all, think about the challenge in moving from a startup to a growing business. Now, these two gentlemen you might recognize, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. Their startup, Apple, had a lot of tricks to learn. It was a huge challenge to them just to launch the very first Apple. But if that's all they did, if they simply stayed in that loop, it wouldn't have got them very far. They'd have got better and better at doing the startup thing, perhaps, but not further. Growing the business to the kind of thing that Apple is today requires adding new elements to the innovation model, as well as fine-tuning it. Procter & Gamble, moving from the world of closed innovation, where their single loop, adapting and adjusting, had worked for well over 100 years, giving them good returns as a major product innovator. But by the turn of the millennium, they decided that the world had changed, that the new conditions were much more about open innovation, where they'd need to try and develop relationships with many external players and build them into their innovation process. Once again, revisiting their capabilities and adding and extending them. The German company, Hella, we've seen this already, began life over 100 years ago making headlights and other accessories for cars. And they developed a great deal of product and process innovation around improving their learning loops for doing that. But they reached a point in the 1980s where that small business had grown to a huge business with many, many different product innovations taking place at the same time. And the systems they had in place at that time to control them just weren't working. And they had to do a major step back and rethink to build a system for managing product innovation and behind that process innovation on a portfolio basis. Again, extending their capabilities. Liberty Global, one of the world's biggest cable companies, delivering media in all sorts of countries around the world on set-top boxes and through other channels. Now they, like any organisation, have had a team of innovation specialists for a long time and an innovation process involving them. But what they've been spending a lot of effort on in recent years is extending their innovation activity to all their employees, using a platform to source ideas and to build on those ideas to get a steady stream of ideas from thousands of employees right around the world. And this idea of high involvement innovation doesn't just happen, it's another extension of our innovation capabilities. And back to Hella again, a company that's been around since the very beginning of the car industry, is now in a world where that car industry is transforming. And so Helen needs to look not just at doing what it's always done with the partners it's always worked with, but to place some bets on what could be a radically different future. What are the capabilities they need to do that? How would they manage there, where they're really looking to create internal startups, what are called corporate ventures? Now these and many other examples remind us that the challenge is not just building our knowledge base, not just building our innovation capability, but also extending and developing that capability. We can think in a way about innovation management capability as a growth towards some kind of maturity, climbing a staircase towards being better and better at the task. Now, no organisation starts with a perfect innovation model. It's a learning process. It begins by trial and error and gradually over time gets refined. Essentially, if we reflect, if we take time out to reflect and build our capabilities, then we can begin to embed a culture of innovation, building routines which become the way we do things around here in our organisation. The structures, the procedures, the way things work. And the opportunity also exists to do a kind of gene splicing, to see how others carry out these tasks and borrow their ideas. We have to adapt them. We can't simply take them and expect them to work on a plug and play basis, but we can splice them into our routines to extend our capabilities. So let's summarise where we've been in this short film. First of all, innovation is a journey from idea to value creation. But at the end of that journey, there's a rich opportunity to learn about how to do things better next time. An opportunity to build our competences, to build our capability, and to extend our capability. And what we can begin to think about is building a culture of innovation, one which embeds routines, patterns of behaviour that enable innovation to happen. So we're really concerned with building dynamic capability, having both a single loop where we're monitoring, improving on a continuing basis what we already do, but also a step back capability, a double loop where we can review and, if necessary, make significant changes. So we want to keep asking ourselves the questions in our review of the things we're doing, what could we do more of and how might we improve those? Of the things we're doing, what should we do less of, maybe even stop? And what new and different things might we need to think about doing to stretch our innovation capability?